Hello and welcome to another episode of Reality Check here on the Talkin Jets channel. What's going on? Matt O'Leary alongside Jeremy, Jets Chaos. What's going on, my friend? How are you?
We are good. We are here. We have things to talk about. And interesting week. Interesting week. Interesting things have happened. Never a dull moment in Jets land, is it?
No, it never is. Mike Williams traded. Joe Douglas speaks. We'll get into Joe Douglas comments in the second half. Wanted to start with the Mike Williams stuff, and we'll get into the chat as well. And anything you got on this game upcoming against the Arizona Cardinals, which I think is going to be tougher than some Jet fans are giving the Cardinals credit for. Maybe we get into that a little bit later too. But let's start with the Mike Williams trade. Jets flip him to the Pittsburgh Steelers, receive a 5th-round pick in return. What was your takeaway of the Jets deciding to trade Mike Williams?
So I'm more upset about some of the things that people are saying, and I'm more upset about the things people are forgetting about this organization than I am the actual player. I'm not sitting here saying this is a life-changing move for the team, right? It's like he barely got any opportunities. He obviously didn't sync with Rodgers, right? But there's some things that are being said about it to justify this trade that are really annoying me. Okay. First off, I want to say we didn't need Mike Williams, assuming everybody's healthy. But I want everybody to remember if Garrett Wilson or Devontae Adams get injured, like in this next game, let's say, who's our number 2 receiver?
I'm struggling because I don't. There's
now,
not a good
now
answer.
if you're someone out there that's thinking, oh, but Jeremy, why would you say that? Don't put that. Someone said, don't put it into existence. Don't put it into existence. We went 4 right guards deep already. 4. Olu was the 4th option. We're 4 deep. We are the New York Jets. If something is set up to go wrong, it always does. So here we are saying we're rich, we're deep at wide receiver, so we can afford to just trade one of them, right? But Lazard is injured right now. And if one of them gets, first of all, if one of them gets hurt, one of our top two get hurt, even when Lazard's healthy, you want him as your number 2. I know he's having a better year, right? So that's not ideal, but he's not even back yet. We don't know when he's going to be back. He's on the IR. It could be a few more weeks. If Adams or Garrett Wilson go down, it's Xavier Gipson as our number 2, or Corley, who has almost scored a touchdown, but he dropped the ball before he got in the end zone. Or Brownlee, who's our core. But here's the thing. We're probably out of it anyway, so it probably doesn't matter. But that's the thing that annoys me. It annoys me that if you did it because the season's over anyway, if you're someone saying, well, may as well get the 5th-round pick, it's over anyway, then why didn't we go all in? Why didn't we trade Reed and get a 2nd and a 3rd for Reed? Why not completely sell? Why only do a partial sell? So it's like, it's either go out and get a defensive tackle, keep Williams for depth and still commit to going for it, or sell, and not. But what we did was the equivalent in poker of what we called a call, right? We didn't do it. We called, which is the worst way to play a hand in poker typically, right? So like if you give me a guy that every hour of playing poker calls 10 times versus a guy that calls 3 times, the guy that calls 3 times is a million times better of a player than the guy that calls 10 times. So calling is not a great thing. It's kind of like, I'm in the middle, right? Make up your mind. Make up your mind. Are we sellers or are we buyers? So what we just did was we put ourselves in a situation where if one of our wide receivers get hurt, now Xavier Gipson in must-win games, we all agree we have to win the next 3 or 4 games. In must-win games, Xavier Gipson becomes our most experienced option as our number 2 receiver. I don't understand it. Why? Because we got the 130th pick of next year's draft. So I just don't understand it. It's not that I love Mike Williams, but why is this team never allowed to have depth?
That's a great question. Would you have felt if Allen Lazard was healthy, let's say, would you have felt differently? Would you have been okay if they moved him with Lazard being here and being the third, or is it that Lazard is also hurt that just adds the fuel to the fire, so to speak?
That makes it worse. For a 5th round pick, I'm not a fan of it at all. Why not just have a lot of depth? But I'm not nearly as bothered by it if we have 3 healthy receivers. Because if Lazard's healthy and you say, oh, well, one of the top 2 go down, Lazard becomes your number 2. He's having a good year. He works really good with Rodgers. Okay, whatever. It still doesn't make a ton of sense to me because I don't understand what a 5th round pick really brings us. It's a dart throw. It's a throw of darts. How many guys who were picked at 130 in the draft work out? I mean, Joe Douglas has been pretty good at it, and people can show his track record, but we don't even know if he's going to be the GM, and we'll talk about that later. So to me, it's just, what did we gain? We have $8 million in dead cap that we have to divide over the next 2 years. So we left ourselves that problem. I just don't see where the value is in that move. I just don't think if they would have traded him for a third, oh, hell yeah. Oh, hell yeah, I get it. Okay, we're going to gamble a little bit and invest now a little bit into the future and kind of go a little bit. And that's kind of like when you call chasing a straight or a flush. Okay, that's the time I could live with a call. But a 5th round pick? A 5th round pick? Are you kidding me? I just don't understand it. And the worst is the people who are saying you got to do right by the player. No. You know who you got to do right by? You got to do right by the fans.
Yeah, that's a great point with the doing right by the fans. The pushback that you're going to get on that is, oh, well, he only has 2 catches in the last 4 games against Houston, New England, Pittsburgh, and Buffalo. And yes, theoretically, you should be able to find ways for someone else to get those opportunities, but there's a little bit of a domino effect that I don't know if people are realizing with this trade and with Lazard hurt. Let's say you don't get Lazard back until after the bye. I think that's probably a fair estimate that he won't play the next 2 games. He is on IR anyway, so it's not like he's eligible to come off within the next 2 games, but now because you traded Mike Williams, you can't play Garrett Wilson in the slot really anymore because both Xavier Gipson or Malachi Corley, neither one of those guys can play on the outside. Both those guys are slot receivers, where even with Mike Williams here, you were able to play him on the outside with either Devontae or Garrett. And when Lazard's healthy, you're able to do that. But with no Lazard, you can't do that for the next 2, maybe 3 games. You have to play Garrett Wilson outside now because you're going to go to, let's be honest, it's probably going to be Xavier Gipson. I would like it to be Malachi Corley. I think we would, agree with you there. But what have they shown you since August to make you believe that, yeah, they're going to choose Malachi Corley over Xavier Gipson for reps?
Right. Someone's saying it's a great return or 5th round pick. Really? 7% of 5th round picks become effective starters in the NFL.
Carter.
7%. Right. Yes, you're naming 2 outliers, but it's still 7%. It doesn't change the numbers. And Joe Douglas is the one that made those picks. And guess what? We don't even know that Joe Douglas is going to be our GM. The reality is 7% of 5th round picks become effective starters in the NFL. 7%. That's a good return. I don't care that you're going to name me the 5th round picks that worked out. It doesn't change that it's 7%. The reality is it's 7%. You want me to name all the 5th round picks that never played a down as a starter in the NFL? Do you want to play that game? Give me a break. Because if right now in this Arizona game, if you see a cart come out and put Garrett Wilson or Devontae Adams on that cart, if that was to happen in this game, in this must-win game, or the week after that in the Colts game, all right, are you going to be sitting there saying, well, we got a 5th round's a good return? No, you're not. You're going to be thinking, oh, well, I guess there goes the season because Xavier Gipson becomes our number 2 receiver. It is ridiculous. A 5th round pick is not a great return. It's 7% chance that you even got a starter. So not a great player, not a star, a starter, someone who could start in the NFL. 7%. 93% never start.
I thought they would do worse than a 5th round pick on the Mike Williams trade. But for me, if Lazard was healthy and they traded Mike Williams, I could understand that because then you still have you could have Lazard and Devontae Adams as your outside guy, with Garrett in the slot, or you have Garrett outside and Devontae, or however how you want to do it. Those as your top three. Again, I get it, but without having Allen and now forcing your hand to either play Xavier Gipson or Malachi Corley, I hope it's Corley. I really do, because I don't think Xavier Gipson's going to give you anything.
Right. And if the answer is, Jeremy, we're 3-6. What are the odds? And I agree with this 100%. What are the odds we're making the playoffs? That's why it's what people are saying that bothers me more than it actually bothers me. Because the reality is I'm on the side of, we're not making the playoffs. We're not going 7-1. Like, why would I think, after watching this team for 43 years, that suddenly the Jets are going to go 7-1 when we need them to? Why would we think that the team who just lost to New England 2 weeks ago is going to magically go 7-1 now? Right? So the point is, it's a 5th-round pick. Yeah. All right. We're going to have an extra pick, and it's not going to matter anyway. We're not going to be in the playoffs anyway. So the odds are it's going to work out fine. So I don't really care that much. But when you sit there and tell me, what bothers me about it is it just shows this organization's, I don't know, it's just inability to be decisive. Like, who are we? Are we believing that we're still in it and we're going to get a defensive tackle, do everything we can to get one to improve stopping the run and really truly still try to win? Or are we sellers because we've given up? But not this mishmash in the middle. So we didn't get a defensive tackle. We didn't trade like a 7th-round pick and make sure we got Jefferson. We lost him to the Bills. We don't have an answer in the middle. We still can't stop the run. And we have less depth at wide receiver. And what did we gain for this non-action? What did we gain? We gained a 5th-round pick for the future. Oh, boy, great. To me, it just doesn't feel like something like an organization like the Eagles does, or the Ravens, or the Steelers, or any of these teams that truly build and year after year win. It just doesn't feel like that to me. It feels like indecisiveness. It feels like that player on the poker room table who's always going call, check. That's what it feels to me.
Mr. Roberts says, why didn't JD address the elephant in the room, a run stopper, before the trade deadline? That's kind of the point that you were bringing up.
Yeah,
is
yeah.
If it's almost 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
Right. It's like, but I don't know. It's like this big trivia question. Are we sellers or buyers? We're playing this like middle game. We didn't try. It doesn't feel like we're buyers because we didn't even address the defensive tackle position. We made no effort. He was released for nothing. That means we could have gotten him for any kind of capital. It could have been a 2026 7th-round pick, and we may have been able to get him. Right. So that part doesn't make sense to me. We made no effort to get a guy we know could have helped this team. We're giving away Mike Williams and saying, okay, to me, that's acting like a team that's kind of given up. Okay, why not trade Reed? Because if we're giving up and rebuilding, TJ Reed's not going to be around for that in the future. So why not just get the draft picks? I just don't understand. Like, why not make the move? Why not make the real move? Again, if I was a normal fan, I wouldn't care about the Mike Williams trade. I'd say we still have Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams, and Lazard will come back and everything will be fine. But we're not normal fans. We're Jet fans. We watched AVT go down. We watched Newman go down. We watched Hansen go down. We watched our 4th guy playing right guard. At the same time, our left guard got hurt, and we got Mitchell, another tackle, playing guard. That's who we are. Our guys get hurt all the time, and it always seems to be exactly in the places where we can't afford for them to get hurt. Now, we were rich at wide receiver, so we were probably okay and not going to have any serious wide receiver injuries. We were charmed. Devontae Adams gets carted off the field practically. He's back in the game, making a great catch 20 minutes later. But now that we made ourselves thin at the position, we're the Jets. Watch what's going to happen. I'm telling you.
How about what Dave says? Williams will go to the Steelers and most likely do better. Is that not the Jets' norm?
It is the Jets, norm, and it's yet another player that we're saying the same thing. We just weren't right fit for him. He didn't sync up with our. How many players are we going to say that about? How many players are we going to keep making excuses? Just didn't fit into our system. Just didn't want to play him out of position. It didn't work for him. I don't want to play him out of position. For the people who are saying, well, we already got our X. I don't want to play him out of our position. I want him to be depth. He's the guy that comes in if somebody gets hurt. How about that? And is it messed up to do to the guy? Is it unfair to do to the guy? Well, he's coming back from an ACL. What's wrong with a year of very limited snaps? But the bottom line is, before the player, the fans come first. And now if we lose a wide receiver, and right now in this timing, and now we're going to have to cart, we're going to have Davante Adams out there, let's say with Garrett Wilson or Davante Adams, and the other one gets hurt. We're not feeling very smart.
Yeah, you got John Carmen says the Mike trade only makes sense if Lazard was in. Now we have to play Gibson or Corley way more than we should. And that's kind of where I am. I don't think Xavier Gibson's best role is in the slot as essentially the starter in 3 wide receiver sets in the slot. And for Corley, yeah, he had a nice play before he dropped the ball, but I don't know if he's ready yet, because the Jets haven't really shown any indication that he's going to be. Do you just believe that magically Malachi Corley is going to be the guy? And in fact, if you listen to Jeff Ulbrich yesterday, the first name they mentioned was Irv Charles. Over both those, do you want to now see Irv Charles for the next 2 weeks until Allen Lazard comes back?
Well, if he does well, we'll be all happy about it. But look, the one play I saw him in a regular play in the end zone, he made a really good effort to catch the ball, and it wasn't his fault, and he actually looked okay. But that's not the point. The point is, it's just mind-boggling. Like, I don't mind as much as long as Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson was to stay healthy. Like for a couple of games. Like, it doesn't bother me as much. Maybe it should. I don't know. It's the fact that we're just such a jinx team. And the likelihood that one of those 2 guys will get hurt has just increased tremendously, because that's just who we are. That's who we've always been. When we can't afford to have it happen, that's when it happens. But here's another thing. Let's say I'm wrong and they stay healthy, and whoever plays, comes in, whether it's a combination of Gibson and Corley and Irv Charles, let's say it works out fine. You know what'll happen, Matt? And I know it. We'll end up playing the Steelers in the playoffs, and guess who will kill us?
Mike Williams, game-sealing touchdown catch.
You know it. You know it. And how do you know it? Talk to any Jet fan out there in the chat right now that's been a Jet fan as long as me, and they'll say, well, Chaos is right. Because that has been happening to us forever. Forever. That's what happens to us.
Yeah, Neil's hanging with us, the guy, the legend. Jeremy is right on with Williams. However, Williams catches the ball and is a solid number 2. He wouldn't even have to be this team's number 2. He would probably be their number 4 receiver when Allen Lazard comes back. I think what's getting me more fired up than Jeremy is the timing of it. It's optics wise looks weird when Allen Lazard is hurt. And that's what I made a comment on Twitter about. And the pushback I received on it was, well, today's the trade deadline day. You can't trade him after. I'm saying, well, yes, obviously. I'm not saying that it's the wrong time to trade him because it's the day of the trade deadline. The point being that with Lazard out, it changes how you're going to use Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams, 2 players that they like to move around and play in the slot and play outside. If Lazard was in and able to do that, fine, but you're not putting 5'8" Xavier Gibson out as an outside receiver, or Malachi Corley, who never essentially played as an outside receiver in college and now is supposed to make that transition in the NFL after playing 25 snaps in 9 games. I don't see it.
He couldn't even find a role in what he's good at. Like, he couldn't get it. He couldn't get in. He was inactive for multiple games. He couldn't get in, and he couldn't get reps in to play the role he was supposed to play for like certain different formations and probably some slot. He couldn't even get in the game for that. Now you're going to say, hey, buddy, we're going to need you to play the X. What's going on here? So is it Brownlee? Is it Irv Charles? Is that what we're talking about? Is that our depth right now for the next 3 must-win games? If someone sprains an ankle or one of our wide, we almost lost Davante Adams. right? A lot of us in the chat during the game in Green Bean, when me and Green Bean were watching, in the chat, people were saying, "Gone, he's out for the season." You know, we were having a heart attack. We thought Devontae Adams was gone, and then he came back later in the game. But we see that should have at least been a lesson of how fragile we are, how easily in one split second we could go from two great receivers on our team to one.
Yep. Dano says, is it safe to tune in yet? Has Jeremy already vented? Yes. The first 15 minutes of the show, about maybe even a little more, closer to 20, has been Jeremy venting a little bit, which is okay. We're allowed to do that about our favorite football team.
Yeah. I mean, and it's so funny because I'm so torn about it because you can see I get all worked up, but it's mostly the comments of people dismissing it as not mattering that bothers me, knowing that they're the same people who want to make the playoffs this year. Like, I don't know. Look, if you're someone who's written them off and says there's no way we can make the playoffs, you shouldn't be mad about this trade. You should only be mad that they didn't do more, that they didn't sell more, right, to get more future picks. If we're waving the white flag, that means we have to retool. You may as well get more picks, right? But if you're somebody who says we still have a chance and we're in this and I'm rooting for us to be in it, how could you be happy? We are definitely not a better football team without him. We're definitely, and it doesn't, I mean, and when I say not a better football team, I mean just not as because he had such a dramatic impact on the field, but just part of being a better football team is having depth, as much depth as possible in every room. And we are now thinner in the wide receiver room. So with Lazard hurt, like what we've been saying, the combination of Lazard being hurt, must win games, it's really kind of weird and odd to part with Mike Williams at this point. It just doesn't seem, doesn't seem like it. I don't understand it, like, because I don't know what this team is doing. I would have accepted a complete sell-off. It would have hurt, and part of me, it would have been a bitter pill to swallow, because there's always a part of you that has that little bit of hope that we can go on that run
And wants
that doesn't want to let go of it. But for people who think just because we beat Houston, oh, we're going to the playoffs, or oh, it's a cupcake schedule, that we could really do this, and you're getting overexcited about it, you really got to understand it's not as cupcake as you think it is. And even if it was, it's not as easy to go 7-1 as you think it is, no matter what the schedule. We lost to New England. We showed that we're our own worst enemy. For us to come out there and be great 7 out of 8 weeks, when we've only come out and been great twice this entire season, is a really, really tall order.
Taylor says he should have stayed on the red line, which is funny. But if he ran the route the right way, do you think he's still here? Is that what did it?
Maybe, but I'll tell you what. If it was Aaron Rodgers' decision, like and I don't like to get into those arguments of who's running, because I don't know. Like, I don't know. Is it Woody? Is it JD? Is it Rodgers' influence? If it's Rodgers' influence, then I'm really starting to get upset, because what we're talking about is a quarterback who is right now like the 23rd ranked quarterback in the NFL. I know he's the best that we've had, but he hasn't done well enough to justify taking over the general manager job. You know what I mean? It's like if he was playing like Tom Brady played in Tampa, fine, whatever you say, boss. But it just doesn't seem to be working out. He hasn't seemed to earn the right to run the team. I'm not saying he does, but if I found out, or if it was to come out that it was his decision, that annoys me. If it's Woody's decision, that annoys me. Can we just hire a general manager and let the general manager be the general manager? I know we're going to talk about that later, but what really bothers me as a Jet fan is that I don't know. The fact that I don't know who's making calling the shots. When Philadelphia makes a deal, we know who's calling the shot. When the Baltimore Ravens make a deal, we know who's calling the shot. When the Pittsburgh Steelers make a deal, we know who's calling the shot. You know what those teams have in common? They're winning franchises. We need to know if we need to have a leader, a head of football operations, a general manager that is not interfered with, that's making the decisions. Can Joe Douglas be that guy? I don't know that he's been given a chance. Now I doubt everything. I don't know what moves are him and what moves weren't him, because what we're finding out is apparently he hasn't had autonomy.
No, he hasn't. And that might be a good transition into what our second topic of the day was going to be here after the Mike Williams stuff, which is Joe Douglas's comments from yesterday. Joe Douglas finally spoke after everything that went down. Robert Saleh got fired. They trade for Devontae Adams. Is the trade deadline. The whole thing. Jeremy, you tell me if you feel differently. He sounded like a guy who is not going to be here much longer to me. That was the interpretation that I got from the tone of his voice in those interviews and some of the quotes.
And I'm not going to come out as this giant JD defender anymore saying this is the horriblest thing in the world and we finally had a good job. I'm not going to do that because I'm so confused about what did he do and what didn't he do. But I will say this. What's really disturbing about it is that Joe Douglas will probably not be the GM, but not because he failed at his job and we fired him. Joe Douglas is not going to return because he's not going to want to return. And that should scare everybody, because who's going to take the job? If Joe Douglas, who has the record he has, right, and things haven't worked out, walks away and says, I'm done with this team, who is coming? Who's going to come and take the job?
Great question. Here's the quote. Joe Douglas on Woody Johnson making the decision himself to fire Robert Saleh. I serve at the pleasure of the owner.
Oof.
What a quote. What a quote. And there's unfortunately SNY didn't have the video of that one, but we do have which one is it? Here we go. Asked about his future. It's 27 seconds. If you'll humor me, I would like to play this because his quote is not the best. He goes, whatever happens, happens.
No, I come in here every day. Just want to do whatever I can to help this team reach its goals. He gets to his destination, and whatever happens, happens.
Have you talked to Woody about your future?
Woody and I talk every day. I'm not going to get into details about any of our conversations, but singular focus right now is the Cardinals and trying to improve on this record.
Whatever happens, happens.
Does not sound like a good thing.
No,
you know what that sounds like?
He's coming back.
Do you know what's really funny? Is that's exactly what Mike Williams said before he was traded. That's exactly word for word what Mike Williams said 3 weeks ago.
A guy who knows he is not for the job much longer. He is updating he's going up to his office after that and updating his resume. That's what it comes across as.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it would be I'm not saying it's impossible. I would be very surprised if Joe Douglas was our GM next year. And I am no longer going to be the guy that stands alone on that hill screaming it was unfair and blah, blah, blah. And I'm not going to be that guy anymore. But at the same time, I'm going to be the guy that reminds everybody, who are you going to hire? People are acting like there's 20 great GMs out there to pick from. Like, where is it? Where do you go to find a new GM right now? And where you're not getting a proven one. You're not getting a proven winner that's in high demand, because they're not going to come and work for Woody Johnson. And then think about this. Let's say you go for people are in love with assistants of successful teams. We'll get the assistant at the Eagles, or we'll get the assistant at Pittsburgh, right? If you were a guy that's in line to become a general manager, why would you go to an organization where the owner not only is going to not give you autonomy, but the owner fucking screws it up every time? So your name gets dragged through the mud. And now your potential future career as a GM is ruins because you went to a team where the owner stuck his nose in constantly, muddled the whole thing up, screwed it up, blew up the whole thing, then fires you. Now you're a person who got fired from a failure team because some owner screwed up. If I'm a guy that's an assistant GM of a successful team, I'm waiting for the right opportunity. I'm not going to the New York Jets to some guy named Woody Johnson who has proven that he is incapable of staying uninvolved.
Wild Wave sends in a super chat on Woody Johnson. Woody is a P word ruined a good rebuild.
Yep.
Shame.
Yep.
Can I give some pushback on this? A little bit, just
Sure.
some slight. I don't know how good of a rebuild we can say that it was when they missed on the quarterback and left tackle, which are probably two of the biggest things on a team and on a rebuilding team, things you need to get right. And like, to be fair, I liked Zach Wilson. I wasn't upset that they took him. I was surprised that they took Mekhi Becton over Tristan Wirfs and was willing to see how that played out. But there were like the reason why they had to pull this lever, the Aaron Rodgers lever, was because they missed so poorly on the number 2 overall pick at the quarterback spot. So like they kind of made their bed by the moves that they were making in said rebuild. No.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, it just all comes down to the Zach Wilson disaster, right? I mean, I'm sorry to say it, but the whole thing just comes down to that. Like, it's just that screwed the whole thing up, and it just blew up everything because it made us have to go out and get an Aaron Rodgers, and then everything just went south after that. Everything just fell apart. Like, now we became this team that's gonna have all these holes next year. That's like, and we were this team just 2 years ago that we're projecting to be building this incredible core, and everything seemed to be going in the right direction. I just got to say this, and I got distracted by this thought. I'm sorry if I didn't answer your question right. I just thought to myself that if I was a team that needed a GM next year, and I'm an owner that doesn't get involved, that admits that I don't know shit, and I just want a GM to give the team to, and I'm a different team, let's say we're not the Jets, and let's say JD leaves the Jets, I don't know who I'd hire over JD. I think I would go chase JD and get him and say, hey, you learned a lot. You have experience now. You messed up on 2 things. You messed up on your coach, and you messed up on a draft pick for a quarterback, which everybody does, because such a low percent of quarterback actually hit. So you messed up on 2 very common things to mess up on, but you did a great job in building a core team. Like, you got a lot of good young players in, you got some middle round guys, you got early round guys, you did a lot of good stuff, and you put together a roster, a fan base, and the media was very excited about, that thought was a contender. Do that again for me, but let's find a better coach. Try again on the coach, and hopefully let's not screw up the quarterback. I don't know of any GM that's going to be available, or any guy I would look for over Joe Douglas, which might be me just saying, I know it's not the greatest thing in the world, but maybe the best scenario for us is Woody Johnson comes out and says, I learned my lesson. I'm sorry. I'm going to go to England and be an ambassador. I'm going to let JD have a second go at this, build around what he already put here, retool the team, because he's the best option we have.
That's kind of what Peter S. is saying here. He says, I agree with Jeremy, but at this point, any new GM who comes in here has to hope Trump puts Woody over as his ambassador in England, and Christopher Johnson will be in charge. I saw a report earlier today that was from Pro Football Talk, so you could take that for however you value. But there's people inside the Jets organization that believe that Woody Johnson is going to go back to being the ambassador. I tweeted this out, and it's not like an uncommon thought, but I think what they need to do, especially with Woody leaving, is they need to hire a president of football operations person and let that person make the decision on the general manager and head coach, and keep Christopher Johnson, and Woody Johnson for that matter too, out of the decisions. I think that would be my attempted fix, because it's so easy to go, well, Woody Johnson, they got to sell. They're not going to do anything until they sell. And while I agree, my preference would be for the Johnson family to sell, I don't think that's a realistic option right now. So the next best thing with them being hiring someone who can run the show and letting that person do their job.
Yeah. I mean, it's the combination of the 2. You got to find the right guy, but you also got to let the guy be the guy. Like if you hire someone that you have to look over and make decisions for, why'd you hire him? It just,
Valuable.
you know, I mean, it's just hire, find the guy that you trust and go with him. I just, again, I'll never understand who that is right now. Because do you really want to gamble? Because remember, an assistant is an assistant. There's no guarantee. People like we see it with assistant coaches all the time. Like, it doesn't matter if you're if you're in the, like, we learned that with the guy from the Seahawks, right? 𝐒𝐿ZDEC or whatever. It's like, just because you're in a winning organization, if you're an assistant, you're an assistant. We don't know what your job was. We don't know that you really made any final decisions, or anything that organization did would have been done if you were the one in charge. It's just rolling dice. We don't know. And at least with JD, we know there's a few things he could fix about himself. Like, if he was willing to grow, I'm sure he is, if he's willing to learn from his mistakes. The three major things is, you got to take another shot at coach. I mean, quarterback is just quarterback. I mean, I don't know what to say about that. Like, you know, he missed once on one big miss, but everybody does. And then the third thing is, that I didn't mention before, is you have to build an offensive line that stays together year after year and gets some years playing together. It can't be a patch-up job. You can't patch up an offensive line every year. You need an offensive line that plays together every year after year.
Good point. Ace Tag Super Chat says the bigger mistake was not drafting Zach, but instead sticking with him for as long as they did. San Francisco moved on quick when they messed up their quarterback. Well, this goes back to last year when they were completely okay with him being the quarterback too, going into the season. That shouldn't have been the case. They should have had a realistic or a real backup quarterback option.
But again, that goes to, was it JD or was it Woody? Did they stay with Zach Wilson too long because of Woody, or because of JD, or because of the coaching? Like, with this organization, we don't know, because we don't have a clear leader.
And you can make a case that it could be Woody, because like they invested this high pick and he wants it to work out and like figure out a way to work. And like, I don't want to spend any more money on the position, like that kind of a thing. But also from Joe Douglas's pride side, like, it was a pick that he made, a number 2 overall pick that he made, and he wants it to work out. And trading him away would be admitting that it didn't work out. So you can make, I think you can make a strong case that it is either on Joe Douglas or Woody Johnson. I don't think you could say, well, it's definitely not on that person, because we have no idea.
Yeah.
But I agree with it. It wasn't good enough.
I mean, there is a way we can get a great GM. There is one way it could happen, because there's one thing that trumps all of it, and that's the almighty dollar. You know what I mean? You could buy, anybody could be bought. But I think that with that, when it has to be, we know that we've meddled in the past. We're giving you all this money. We're going to make you the highest paid GM ever in history. We're going to give you this long guaranteed contract. And I'm going to tell you, because it's such a long guaranteed high contract, you own us. So we're not going to be able to meddle and tell you what to do, because you won't be afraid of getting fired, because you have a guaranteed contract. And that's the only way we're going to get someone, a guaranteed contract where they can look at Woody and say, shut up and get out of my office. What are you going to do? Fire me? I'll go to Bermuda with my freaking millions and millions of dollars. And like, in other words, he has to commit when he's using his brain and he's not getting emotional. He has to sign it away. He has to depower himself by giving some crazy big guaranteed contract to some proven winning GM, right? And take it out of his hands, because now you empower that GM to say, I don't have to listen to you. I own you now because of this contract. That's our only hope.
That is exactly that. That is the only hope that the New York Jets have there. Peter S. is saying that he thinks it's Woody Johnson. He goes, I would guess that it was Woody. We see his track record of the splash moves. That's true. And you also see the track record of his moves this year, going around Joe Douglas to fire Robert Saleh. Mm-hmm. Apparently doing the same thing with Devontae Adams and Hassan Reddick too. And this goes back to the comments that Joe Douglas had yesterday. What's his incentive to show up for work if the guy above him is just going to do all the moves anyway?
Yeah, it's just, And it's humiliating and embarrassing, right? There's nothing worse. I don't know how many of you have experienced that at work. I'm an assistant principal, or was. It's one of the reasons I'm not, is because I had a principal who would not only step in and override something I was doing, but they were wrong. So so not only did they weren't doing it in the way that was helping me grow, I would be putting in a policy to make the school better because I was the one that was actually knew the students and the parents while they sat in their office being a principal. And then they would come and totally ruin it and hurt the school. And I knew how humiliating that was because I had to be the face of the school to then somehow explain it to everybody. So I know exactly how JD feels if Woody's making these moves. Like the whole firing of Robert Saleh. Look, I came out and said I understand why Saleh got fired. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I didn't like I wasn't upset. Like at the time, like I definitely said and gave all the reasons why it makes sense that Saleh was fired. What didn't make sense, and I never said, was that the timing was smart. Like
No.
we were 2-3. At the very least, no matter how you slice it, we should have been 3-2. It's not his fault that Zerline missed that kick. We should have been guaranteed been 3-2 at a minimum. We could have been 4-1 if Zerline was better, right? Or a couple of other little tiny things. So we were easily 4-1 or 3-2. We were 2-3. Firing him when we were 2-3 with a game to be first place in the division on the line coming up against the team that Saleh has beaten for the past 2 years at home was the stupidest firing you could have possibly made.
Dylan over at Jet Nation is hanging with us. What's up, Dylan? Says Jody sounds checked out. That's the perfect word to use to describe. We've all been there, and you just described your job that you didn't really like anymore because of the circumstances you were put in. You're kind of just you're running out the clock. You're just waiting for that contract to be over, and you can get on your merry way.
I remember teachers would say to me, "Are you going to be here next year?" And I'll say, "We'll see what happens."
You know what that means.
When I was happy, I said, "Of course I'm going to be here. We got this great vision. We're going to turn the school around." No, I mean, but right now, every Jets fan that was afraid or a fearful Jet fan had a few weeks ago or a month ago was justified for being afraid and fear. It means they knew something was very, very wrong. And that just getting a guy like Davante Adams wasn't going to fix it. It helps the team. We're a better team with them, but it wasn't going to solve the problems. What's going to now? Maybe the culture, maybe Old Brick is, because you can't change a culture in 1 week.
No.
If the Jets were to win the next 2 weeks and play really well, I'm not just saying win, but play really well, like what we saw in the second half. If that became this momentum thing, and they played at this beautiful football where they're scoring on a lot of possessions and really the defense is finding a way and we're getting 5+ sacks. If that was to happen, then you start to believe maybe what happened was Ulbrich it took time, but got that culture to change. Maybe he got that culture. Maybe the players did it. Maybe it was just they needed something good to happen, whatever it is. But understand, this is a big maybe. This is far from happening. And we didn't get into it yet, but another thing, and I see it in the chat, that people are saying it, and they're absolutely right. Arizona, because I said cupcake schedule before, Arizona is not a cupcake.
No.
At all. And we're on the road.
5-4.
They're 5-4, and it's not like, they've only beaten garbage teams. Look who they've lost to. They've lost to really good teams, and they've beaten some good teams. So Arizona is like, hey man, this is a really big game. This is not a joke. This is probably going to be just as hard as the Houston game.
They beat their 5 wins this year are the Rams, 49ers, Chargers, Dolphins, Bears. None of those teams are really pushover teams. And Tua was back, by the way, for the Miami game. The losses that they had at Buffalo, against Detroit, against Washington, and against Green Bay. All 4 of those teams are going to be playoff teams this year and have a chance to do damage in the playoffs.
Yeah. I mean, it's shocking that we're only a 1-point underdog. It's shocking. What it means is, and this is a vote for JD. What it means is the odds makers, the media, the people who make the odds, that create the sports line, what it shows is that regardless of our record, they agree that there's a ton of talent on our team and our roster. They agree that our roster is not being represented by the record, right? That whether it's the culture, whether it's this or that, whether it's the coaching, whatever you want to blame. From the outside perspective of the odds makers, they're looking at our roster and saying, this is a really good team. And they're ignoring our record because how are we only a 1-point underdog in Arizona? I would think we're a 1-point underdog if Arizona was playing at MetLife. We'd be getting a point. In Arizona, I would think, I mean, again, we've said it. Look who they've beaten. Look who they've lost to. There's nothing not legitimate about their record. This is a good football team.
And look at all these other things going against the Jets. One, as you pointed out, it's on the road. This team is not a good road team. Most of their big wins over the last 3 years or so have all been at home at MetLife Stadium. They're going to the West Coast. How often do the Jets play well on the West Coast? Not only on the road, but on the West Coast. Doesn't happen very often. They have the extended rest. The Jets have been horrible on extended rest over the last 3 or 4 years. So those three things, on top of Arizona being a 5-win team, I don't know. I think they're going to have a really hard time this week. I'm not saying they can't win. I think there's a chance that they win. I think they're going to have to score some points, though. I think it'd have to be a little bit of a shootout because we've seen Arizona put up 28 and 29 points the last 2 weeks.
Well, that's what's so hard to believe that about the Jets, that they could go 7-1, is that we're such a Heckle and Hyde. We're Jekyll and Hyde. I said it reversed. Okay. It's such a you don't know who you're going to get. Like, in other words, the Jets could come out and win by 20 points, and it wouldn't be surprising, and it might look totally natural. If Rodgers plays the way he played in the second half, and Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson are going crazy, making great catches and running all over the field, it's not hard to see against Arizona's defense. It's not hard to imagine Breece Hall going crazy. It's not hard to see us put up 35 points. It wouldn't be shocking, like, how is this happening? It would be very understandable when you look at the talent we have on the field. You'd say, oh, look, it's just simple. Aaron Rodgers is playing well. He has 2 elite receivers, or 2 really good receivers. We have an elite running back or a great running back. It makes total sense. It looks normal that we'd be scoring touchdowns just like we did against Houston. It wouldn't feel unusual. But here's the crazy thing. We could come out and get blown out and be playing horrible penalties, can't get a first down, and it wouldn't be surprising either. No. Like, that wouldn't be surprising.
No.
So, I mean, like, that's the kind of football team we are. We have no idea what we're going to see. Are we going to see the team that played in that second half against Houston that's a really good football team with really good players that can make huge plays? Or are we going to see the team that played New England, the team that played Denver, that can't get their head out of their ass? We don't know. And that's why it's so hard for me to believe in this football team, because we're in a hole right now where we have to assure a playoff spot, win 7 out of 8 games. Well, what are the odds we're going to come out being that good team week after week after week when they've never proven they could do it on a long-term basis?
They got to do it again. That's where I am. If they do it again against Arizona, then maybe you'll have confident Matt back for the Indianapolis game. Honestly. Peter says, going by all that you just said, Matt, Jets 23, Cardinals 20, though I agree Arizona likely wins. Neither scenario. If the Jets won this game 28-27, or if they won, like you said, 30-17, I wouldn't be like, oh my God, wow, that was such a shocker. But also, if the Jets lost this game 20-16, I don't think anyone's going to go, wow, I am floored that the Jets lost that game.
I mean, we lost to New England 2 weeks ago. How could we be surprised by anything?
They lost horrible.
We lost to such a bad football team. There's no words. I mean, it's hard to even express it with human language, the English language, how bad the New England Patriots are, how bad their roster is. The fact that we lost to them is it's in a game we needed to win, in a game we absolutely had to have. We found a way to lose, and no excuses, really no excuses. It's, like, there's no rhyme or reason. I mean, it's definitely all in everybody's heads. It's definitely a mental thing.
It is. I love this comment from Yeti, by the way. I wanted to pull this up. Connor, meaning James Conner, won't go down easy. He's an angry run winner. Got to wrap him up. They ran for over 200 yards last week. Now, I know Chicago's run defense isn't like, the early 2000s Ravens or anything like that.
Neither is
But
ours.
yeah, but that's what I was going to say. The Jets run defense, they're 21st in the league in rushing yards allowed. The Cardinals are 7th in rushing yards and 2nd in yards per attempt on the year. Arizona would be silly to throw the ball more than 20 to 25 times in this game. I would think James Conner has to have 20 plus carries, and it would be, all right, the Jets have to show that you can stop them. And I'm not sure that they can. Although I will, Dano's been on this all week. He's been saying they got to stack the box and bring guys down to line of scrimmage. I think that's their best chance of doing it. But we've seen these safeties and linebackers miss tackles too, even when they come down to make plays.
Yeah, I mean, and also we've seen stubbornness for the Jets, wanting to play the way they want to play instead of the way they should and need to play. You got to do it the Belichick way. Bill Belichick would stack the freaking box on the Cardinals. He'd say, you're not going to beat us with the run. Kyle Murray is going to have a spy, and he's going to have to beat us with his arm. That's what Belichick would do. The Brady Belichick, the one that actually won games. So, and there's no doubt that it's the right decision, right? It's no doubt it's the right decision. If you're coaching this game, it's very, very simple. You stack the hell out of that box. You do everything you can to say, if you beat us, it will be Kyle Murray has to drop back and beat us. That's how it has to happen. And if that's the way it happens, okay. Right? I mean, not okay. It sucks for us, but you cannot go in there. And man, freaking Frankie from Flatbush has been screaming at the top of his lungs about this. You can't go in there and keep playing nickel and dime defense. You can't. It's not working. It doesn't work. Like, it's been horrible. When teams are running against us, we have to play base defense and we have to stack the box. I mean, it's clear as day. It's all over the film. So, like, the stubbornness has to stop. We have to start, like, acting like a team that's trying to win and coaching to win. And it's a very obvious thing. The box has to be very, very crowded. Kyle Murray has not proven consistently enough that he is a guy who could drop back and make passes and beat you with his arm. And I still, even with Sauce's struggles, still find our secondary to be pretty okay and pretty trustworthy to put that responsibility on them. And if we can't, then we're done anyway. Like, if we can't trust Reed and Sauce and play that kind of strategy and play that kind of game, then we're done anyway.
Yep.
Because then we have nothing.
Good question here from Dylan. He says, do you shadow Sauce on Harrison this game? Height advantage over Reed doesn't scare me, but maybe they see it differently. I would. I know they've talked about, like, all offseason, it felt like we heard, oh, Sauce is gonna shadow guys a little bit more this year. This is one of those games where I feel like it's your opportunity to do that, because the rest of their wide receiver core, was it Michael Wilson and Greg Dortch are their other two big receivers. I would think that Reed could handle those guys. The one thing in their passing attack that scares me is the tight end. Trey McBride is by far their best pass catcher.
And we get eaten alive by that.
So this is going to be a really tough test for this defense that hasn't played great this year.
Yeah, I think that, it's so funny. If you asked me this question before the season started, I was all about it. Like, hell yeah, Dylan. Yeah, man. No question about it. A million times. So frustrated that we're not. Put Sauce on their best receiver. For the love of God, why aren't we doing that, right? It makes no sense. It will never make sense to me. It's part of the reason why I think that Saleh doesn't have a job right now. Not specifically we're firing you because you're not having Sauce, but because we would have been a better team if he had done that. And we would have been better for the last, since Sauce became a Jet, if we had done that. But man, in the last few weeks, I'm not going to lie, I've lost a lot of confidence in Sauce. I mean, I don't feel about him the same way that I felt about him, but I still think matchup-wise, he's the best guy to be covering Harrison. I'm not as confident that it'll work, but yeah, if I'm calling the defense, I'm saying I want Sauce covering Marvin Harrison every play.
Have you heard my Sauce Gardner take for this year? I don't know if I don't remember if I've told this to you or not.
I don't know.
I think he's playing hurt right now. And the reason behind that theory is I don't think at 24 you just fall off the face of the earth the way that he has. We saw him in week 1 leave the game against the 49ers, standing on the sideline with his helmet, cleared to come back in, but wasn't back in. And then in a few more games this year, he's gotten banged up and had to leave for a few plays and come back. I'm not buying that again at 24. Like it's just year 3, just can't do it anymore. I think he's playing through injury. That's my theory on it.
That's actually hard to argue. Like that's a just very, very strong possibility that, it's kind of like, or, and I think it could be head too. Like, when you get lit up and you don't feel right for a really long time, it's like maybe he was good enough to fool like it wasn't a full on, I can't pass a concussion protocol, but maybe he's just right now, he's just not, and he keeps re-injuring or getting banged up, and he's just like he looks like a shell of what he was. He looks a lot less aggressive, a lot more like hands-off-ish, not just with the tackling, but even the way he's playing, except for the fact that he's grabbing on. I think that you might very well be right, but I think there's one more piece to it as well. And that is the one thing that he needed to learn, and in year 3, it should have been learned by now, is he still hasn't learned how to turn around. Like once you read the receiver's eyes, I get it. He likes to read the receiver's eyes. He likes to be looking at the receiver. But when those receiver's eyes tell you the ball is on the way, he's got to learn how to turn. There are penalties he's getting that would not be penalties if he just turned around and played the ball.
Yeah, that's a fair criticism of his game.
Yeah, and I said it from the beginning. And at first, I ate humble pie. When I first said, "How come he doesn't turn around?" And somebody came along, probably a Dom C type of guy, and said, "Well, Jeremy, the way he plays defense is he reads the eyes of the receiver." That's fine, but don't tell me that the next progression in his career would have been, I'm looking at his eyes, I'm reading the receiver, the ball is coming, and now I get my body to turn. And I turn and find the ball and play the ball. Okay? Because don't tell me that's not how you play defense at cornerback. I'm not a cornerback. I never played cornerback, but I've been watching this game long enough to know that a cornerback, when they're on a receiver making contact, needs to be turned towards the ball. Otherwise, you're going to get the laundry every time. And there's a lot of times he didn't get the flag that he probably should have.
Green Truth says, Matt, they had a huge run before the half. The Bears were caught sleeping. Not wrong, but they've had other games where they've had huge rushing numbers. They ran for, what's the number? 231 yards against the Rams, 181 against the Chargers, who are well coached under Harbaugh. Like if this was their one-off, hey, a 213 rushing yard performance, I get that, but still on a 9-game sample size on the season, they're still second in the league on rushing yards per attempt. This is a good run team. It's not just that one game.
Yeah, no, we look, it doesn't matter even if they're not very good at the run. We're very horrible at stopping the run. So the point is we traded Mike Williams, but we're not sellers. But we're certainly not buyers, because if we're buyers, we would have spent the 7th round pick before Jefferson was released, and Jefferson wouldn't be a freaking Bill right now. He'd be a New York Jet. We did nothing to address defensive tackle. I will never understand it.
There we go. I think that's a good spot to end this episode. We just hit the hour mark on this one, so that's going to do it for us on this show. We'll be back on Thursday. Hopefully, Jeremy, I hope we're talking about a Jets win and getting all pumped up about a Sunday at MetLife Stadium against the Colts. That'd feel pretty nice.
A win against Arizona and a game against, I'm not going to underestimate anybody, but definitely a weaker team than Arizona and Houston. So if we beat Houston and Arizona, now don't take anybody lightly. 4-6, playing the Colts. A bye week coming to heal up, you might actually get a Jeremy that's starting to even maybe sneakily start believing a little bit.
Guys, that'll do it for us. I'm Matt. He's Jeremy, and we will catch you next time.